Okay, hello and welcome to another first time SD ComfyUI tutorial. And today we're going to be talking about prompts and the basics of their use. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail, but we're just going to talk about how to actually get good stuff out of your prompt, like in a very basic way. There will be a more advanced tutorial following this, probably a couple of days later, where I'm going to go fully into it and I'm going to rebuild a whole workflow and everything for you to like really sink your teeth into. So first off, I'm going to get rid of this just so that I can fix this in. So I don't want these images all over my hard drive. All right, let's go. Yep. And Juggernaut's no. Fine, Impressionism. Why not? Okay. So prompting. It's how you interact with Stable Diffusion. And if you've used a web service or you've used Automatic or you've used Midjourney or any of the other things, you'll know that you type in words, images appear. And the thing about these things, it's a computer. It doesn't really understand what you're saying. It certainly doesn't understand the order of words or connective words or syntax. It doesn't really understand anything about the English language, how it works, how people speak. That is not what it is for. It is merely good at descriptive words and descriptive fragmentary statements, if that makes sense. So, and it doesn't even work that way, not intelligently. So if I say, man standing on a car, for example, man standing on a car, to you and me, that makes sense, right? You're pretty sure what that is going to be. And if I generate it, there's a chance it'll work. There's also a very high chance of it not working. And that's because Stable Diffusion doesn't really understand you, as I said before. See how it has a man standing next to a car. Now, it doesn't matter what model I use, because this is a thing which is a problem with all Stable Diffusion, including SDXL, the latest one, although it is a bit better, which is that you can generate this hundreds of times and it's still going to give you people not standing on top of cars when you tell it to put people standing on top of cars. I've said on a car, not on top of. There we go. We'll just fix that up. Now, I'll regenerate it. And as you can see, we still don't have people standing on top of cars. Now, I could generate this 100 times and maybe, 1/3 of the time it might come out with him actually on top of the car. But you'll notice so far it still hasn't happened, and I've generated a few images at this point. If you check out the basics tutorial, I do explain how to get this sampler working, so you should go watch that if you haven't already. All right, so as you can see, still is not on top of a car. No matter how many times I see him generate it, it's just not going. There we go, we finally got one where he's on top of the car. Now, this is because it understands that there is a man. Yes, it understands that there is something standing. It understands that there is something on top. And it understands that there is a car. And it does not care what order those words are in at all. It preferences things based on how close they are to the start. So it wants a man to appear in the image more than it wants a car to appear in the image. But as far as it's concerned, the order of this sentence is irrelevant. So if you can get that kind of thought process into your mind, you'll have a better understanding of how the thing thinks about what you've said to it and the likelihood that it will actually produce images like that. And the likelihood of it actually producing images is it's almost about probability, and the probability that it has those images in its data. So when they make these, it's like billions of images and a bunch of information about each image all slapped together into one big thing. And it uses what you say here to produce an image. It's not reproducing an image, it's just it's grabbing little bits and pieces of data and and connecting them through, what would you call it, inference. So if I put a man, it goes, okay, what's a man most likely to look like? And if I put a car, what's it most likely to look like? And it tries to fit within that, and it uses information from the sampler to basically process an image. And it's all based off probability and numbers and all that kind of stuff. I'll get into that more in another tutorial. But essentially, because it doesn't really understand the instructions it's being given, all it can do is give you a best guess. Which means that when you include words like which is separate, which don't even make sense. I could say it's nighttime. I could say it's raining. I could say there's a volcano in the background. Behind. This doesn't make any sense English-wise, right? But to it understands that you want these things in the image in this order of importance. So we should have volcano behind. It's overcast and raining. Man standing on car. Now I could generate this a few times. And you see standing next to the thing. It's definitely including the volcano. Now the reason it can include the volcano roughly in the same kind of composition every time is because you've said it's behind stuff, and you've also said that it has to be included with these things. So basically, it's also easy enough to include these in the background, like probability-wise. It's easy enough to get things behind things, in addition to what you've already told it to get. Now, if I want this man to get closer to the camera, I can describe him more. So if I say, bearded man, wear armor and holding a flag, for example. And we run it. See how he's gotten closer to the camera because I've described him more. And because I've described him more, I've given it more detail, and it goes, okay, I need to include this detail. And to do that, I need the person to be closer to the camera. So if you're having problems getting someone close to the camera, just describe them more. If you're having problem getting the person smaller, describe the background even more. So you have a volcano, burst lava, and a burning city. So I do that, maybe he'll get smaller, maybe he'll get bigger. So he's still kind of the same color, sorry, size. But if I remove this again, remove the bearded, and remove the armor and wearing, now he's still holding a flag, but he should be further away. See how he's got a little bit further away now, because he's less important in terms of what the image is being asked to do. Now, if I just get rid of holding a flag completely, it may even not include the man in the image at certain points, or the car, as in this one didn't include the car. So this is a good way of figuring out how to focus your image, just using descriptive, the amount of description and how you describe it, and remembering that as far as it's concerned, the order of words doesn't matter. It's more that there are words there. Now I'm going to show you one other thing. I'm going to show you how color works with this, because color can help you see how a word interacts with the background, for example, like with the entirety of the image. So if I say sock player standing huge empty room looking sad. Why not? Who knows? I'm just making this up. Now you'll notice that I was able to predict what those images would likely be based off of, because I've done this like hundreds of times. So if we, this soccer player is too far away. So how about How about a soccer player? Cowboy smoking. Right, we'll try that again. Please be closer to my camera. Okay, it's made a cowboy. Good enough. You'll see it's ugly. SD is not great at imaging people this close to the camera. It's much better if they're right up against you. There's ways of fixing this. You can check out the facial replacement and facial kind of reconstruction tutorial I've got. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, facial restoration, I think it is. All right. Now, color. Now, if I say he's wearing a red cowboy hat, watch what happens to the rest of the image. You'll notice that not just the hat is red. And that's because it doesn't define red as only being on the hat. It defines you as wanting red in the image. It doesn't necessarily care where it is. And the more red, the better as far as it's concerned. And this will consistently do it. This is like color poisoning, as I call it color poisoning. So if you're ever actually generating images like these, make sure that you don't use color unless you really want to, because color is going to mess with it. I could change this to blue and I'll do the same thing. Now, it's not 100% of the time going to do this. There'll be varying levels of this kind of color poisoning going on. But generally speaking, color doesn't always go where you tell it to, or even go where you tell it to at all. Like his hat's not even blue, so. Another thing is, here's a tip. If you don't want to use color, but you still want to get a kind of look, you can say, you can add these details on the end. This is like some of the other stuff you do. Okay. See, I'm not telling it what anything, just I'm saying warm tones. So everything's kind of brownish now, brownish, and because these are considered warm tones in camera, in like camera photos and stuff like that. So if you use warm tones, it'll make stuff with this kind of look. And all of this stuff's based on probability. So there's all these photos out there that have described as having warm lighting or warm tones. And they're in the database, and it goes, aha. Additionally, if you ever want to know what something you type might make, just type it into Google and look at the image thing, because the images that appear, yeah, literally that's the stuff in its database. Like, not all of the stuff, but a large amount of the stuff on those, the first top of that list when you run Google is going to be what it's trying to use to build the images you're making. Okay, I might as well show you negative prompting. And so negative prompting is the act of telling it that you don't want something in the image. And it's better for getting a certain look, like an overall look, or making sure you don't have certain things in the image. It's not so good at directly never having a thing, because you can't tell it never ever have this thing, because sometimes it's just going to do it. Like, for example, if I do a city at night, I'll do city street at night, yeah, street at night. What we're going to have is we are going to have lights. We're going to have lights everywhere. Now, this is a problem because almost all images in the training data that are a nighttime city have lights. So getting it to not have lights is incredibly difficult. So you just say a dark city. It doesn't really matter the order, it'll still just do it. So, and you'd be going, okay, it's dark, it's got darker tones. The image is a little bit darker, and you're like, okay, well, what if I put lights in here? And you go, hey, why are there still lights everywhere? You keep adding more and more things in the hopes that you can get rid of all the lit aspects in the image. Right? And you keep going. And you keep adding more and more of these things and just desperately trying to get it to be nighttime. And you look, see, it's suddenly the sky is getting brighter. So we go, okay, daytime, right? We run it again. And see how it's still bright, there's still lights. You'd even go as far as going abandoned and hoping that if it's abandoned that it will not have any lights. Oh look, there's still lights. You could say the blackout. Try it again. Still lights. So this is how heavily weighted night shots of the city are towards having lights. And which basically says you can't, sometimes you just can't get it to not show a thing. Which is it's real painful that that's the case. There are ways around this. You could, instead of using an empty latent image, you could use a dark image, which gives it even more chance of getting a darker image. Like it'll weight the noise that goes into this in the direction of having less lights. It's one of the only ways to do it. It's also a problem specifically for 1.5 models because they love being 50% light, 50% dark. Like that's how it makes images. So if it can't do that, then it's like if you just, all right, I'll show you another one. A dark void of black. All right, so there should be nothing in this, right? There should be nothing. It should just be pure black. And yet it's put a person in for some reason, right? This is partially the fault of the model that it's got a person. It's because this is a photorealistic model and there's a lot of data for certain kinds of images in it. But as you can see, black wallpaper, solid black, you do all kinds of stuff and it's just gonna never quite get there. It's always trying to go 50% light, 50% dark, which can be really frustrating. All right, on to qualitative words. So qualitative words are words specifically designed to get a look or get a certain appearance to an image. Often you use them to say things like, I want this to be a 70s photo, or I want this to be a cartoon, or I want this to be a comic or whatever. So this includes artistic styles. This includes when you're copying an artist. This includes when you're saying, oh, I want 8-bit graphics or whatever. Even cyberpunk technically. And basically, you use them to make the image look the way you want. But it's not about the subject of the image. It's not about the background of the image, that kind of stuff. It's the look. And there's a lot of words people don't understand, as I've said earlier. And because of that, a lot of prompts you see on the internet are going to have a lot of words, especially qualitative words, that don't do anything or do the opposite of what you want. For example, portrait images. So if you say, I want this to be a portrait, for example, it's going to often make paintings, right? Which means you're already fighting a losing battle when it comes to realism if you are using the word portrait. And that's because basically portrait paintings are incredibly common in the training data. Even for photorealistic models like realistic vision, it's trying to do those things. Now, if you use the word masterpiece, for example, and we run it, and you think, oh, that's going to make it even better. Well, Not really, because that's also a painting word, right? You just added even more weight to it not being realistic. If you add the word realistic in the hopes that this will help you out. This is also not going to really do the trick. Okay, it's not strong enough to fight against the portrait stuff. It's not strong enough to kind of, it'll sharpen up the image quite often. Realistic is good at that, but you can see that it's just pulling out more and more photos. Pull this a bit closer together. And so you go, okay, well, let's make it a photo. And you think, yeah, this will definitely make it better, but it's still not doing it. It's still doing painting of a person, right? So you go, oh, how about we change some of these, and we go portrait photo, right? And you run it and you think, yeah, this might work. But still, it's not strong enough to do a portrait, like to fight against portrait, especially not all the time. It will get close. You can see it looks a little bit more realistic now. And, you know, you might think that using words like, well, this is almost a photo actually, but you might think of using words like, for some reason, people use ray tracing, and they use words like Unreal Engine, and they use words like hyper realism, and they use words like, what else? They use UHD, they use 8K, they use DSLR, and they use a whole bunch of these words, thinking that it'll make fantastically photorealistic things. And it's not actually what it does. It's going to produce near photorealistic. So you're going to get images like this, which are close, but they're not human. Right? They're in the uncanny valley. And that's because a lot of these words don't do much. So you pull out these ones that seem like the game related, and you're okay, well, maybe this will do it. And it's just because people don't bother to Google the words to figure out what they would actually do to it. Now, if we get to here, we're getting pretty close, but you can still see that it's not quite right, okay? And so if we pull out hyperrealism, we can get even more influence for the thing. So it looks a bit more realistic, but it's a little bit weighted towards paintings again. So we pull out portrait completely, and we go photo. Because by default, you do a photo of a princess, it's going to be a portrait anyway. You don't need to use the word portrait. And now we're being hit by another issue of the models, and that's the fact that princess is a poisoned word. Thanks to Disney, it loves making cartoon pictures of princesses. So you're often going to get stuff like this happening where it's got anime or cartoon features. So it's even more annoying, right? Like, how do you get a realistic thingo of a princess when it's weighted towards making Disney princesses, right? And so your way of fighting that is to use a combination of realism type words and then using negative words. So you want to use stuff like painting, illustration, cartoon. I use these all the time. Sketch. So if we weight more negative words in here, we can make it not have things. So we use another one. We use render. Because 3D images, they're rendered. So we don't want that. Throw it in negative. 3D, 2D, don't even need 2D. All this stuff, we just don't want it. So we run it again. Person's really far away this time, but it looks more like a photo. Hopefully we can get a closer up image now, but it may just throw them into the background again. This is a result of some of the interactions of these negative prompts can actually cause composition changes too. So if we go, how about we go 3, 4 photo, 3, 4. It shouldn't understand slash. Slash should just like, but I'm pretty sure that slash is used by commenting. But it should still work by itself, I think. I'm probably wrong. I could just use, I'll just use the words, why not? Photo, I guess. So anyway, so it's making photos, right? And if you keep tweaking these qualitative words, don't add too many, because the more you add, the more it imprisons you. So the more words in your prompt, the more you are held in place by it. The less you can do if something goes wrong, because there's just so much there that you could completely mess up your image, basically. And don't forget that if you're having quality issues, trying to get photos or whatever, the sampler is super important for getting really good images. So messing with the sampler is just as important as messing with the prompts. So I'll run this again. And generally, if you do a lot of experimenting with this stuff, you'll find the right kind of words for you. So this looks pretty realistic. Now, if you want to really look and see what these words do, you can do stuff like, I'm going to be careful with realism, with realistic vision, because it's tricked me before. Don't you dare do what you did last time I did this. Oh, thank God. So you can use the individual words from your qualitative stuff and see what images they make as well. And if you have your negatives applied, it should show you a rough idea of the kind of features that it's going to bring to an image. But as you can see, it's going for photos because I'm weighted entirely towards photos with this model and this negative. But it's giving me mostly landscapes at the moment. Car photos, that kind of stuff. Because I don't have a subject, it's just doing these. And, you know, if I do portrait by itself, you can get more of a look at what it thinks those things mean by doing this, like isolating words and then running those words. Anyway, so this should give you the tools you need to kind of get better at this kind of stuff. And I'll go in more detail in another video where I'm going to show you how you can really research these things. All right. Thank you for watching, and hopefully this has been useful to you. It's my first video where I'm actually editing it, so bear with me if there's some quality issues. I do have a new microphone as well. Anyway, thanks for watching.